It's going to be a packed house tonight. No backpacks, no coats on chairs. Let's make space. Let's get cozy with Bitcoiners. Everybody smells great in Bitcoin, so it's going to be totally fine. We're going to have a good time tonight. All right, we're going to get started 5 to 10 minutes. We got Adam back. We got Sean Bill, the CIO of Blockstream, and we got Max K. I don't really think that's how you pronounce his name, but that's what he told me to say. Max K from Debifi, Hodl, Baltic Honey Badger. This is going to be great. So this is an AMA. We're not going to talk about the products and services as much. We can, but this is really about what you guys want to talk about. Raise your hand. I'm going to be roaming around with the mic. I'll be a little bit of the MC. We could talk about anything. It could be about Bitcoin. It could be about, like, you know, what are you into other than Bitcoin? Like, what do you do with your free time? That could be good. Bitcoin, exactly. Anyway, happy you're here. Tip your bartenders. You know, this is a tavern chat, so if anybody uses a term of art or something you don't quite understand or you want to double click on, just raise your hand or interrupt politely or not. We'll be, you know, deciding. It's a judgment thing whether or not you need to go, and hopefully we don't have to get there. But please get cozy. We got a lot of folks that want to see Adam tonight and everybody else. And we'll get started in 5 to 10. Thank you for being here. Welcome to PubKey. All right. One more announcement. Before we get started, we're going to have everything streaming in the banquette there. The banquette, very vibey. It's like Caddyshack, but a little run over. All right. It's got a golf theme. It's got that green carpet. I don't really love the color. Hopefully we destroy it sooner rather than later. We can rip it out and do something else again. However, if you don't have a great seat, you can enjoy the entire show. I will make sure that I go in there and make sure that I collect some questions from those folks. It might be a little bit more comfortable in that room as well. We do have to keep the aisle clear for staff and service and everything. And I feel like we can get a little, we can get one in there. We can get like at least, we got 3 over there. Let's get in there. We got like 1 over there. Any coats, backpacks? I'm gonna inspect this thing. Anyway, let's get. What? Yeah, you can sit on Rob Hamilton's lap over here. It's fine. All right. Welcome to PubKey. I'm Thomas. We got Max. We got Adam. We got Sean. This is an AMA. We can talk about whatever you guys want. I want to kick it off with the first question. I already pre-read this one. What do you do for fun outside of Bitcoin? You can't talk about Bitcoin. You can't say, I just do Bitcoin stuff. What do you actually enjoy outside of Bitcoin?
Books. I read books.
What kind of books?
Really enjoyed Three Body Problem recently. Yeah, right? Now I'm reading Foundation by, and also some Russian literature.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
I
and
love
also
the
swimming.
passports.
Swimming.
Foundation passports.
No,
No?
just Foundation. I mean,
All right,
no
well,
shilling.
I already broke
I'm
the
a
rule.
cold card guy.
I broke the rule by breaking it about Bitcoin. All right, Foundation is great. So sci-fi mostly.
Sci-fi, yes, and Russian classics as well.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Nice. Adam? Oh, let's turn that one on.
Yeah. So I don't know if it counts, but I do some Bitcoin trading.
No, come on. My favorite thing from the documentary was Peter was just excited to do urban spelunking and show off like stalagmites when he was talking to Colin Hoback. You got to give us something not Bitcoin that you love.
I like playing with Rubik's cubes and other variants of that kind of thing, just as a kind of fidget spinner.
That's very Bitcoin adjacent. All right, Sean, let's go.
I like going driving on like a Saturday morning. I'll get up early before the kids wake up and go hit the back roads in Northern California. That's what I enjoy.
That's great. That's good.
A Porsche convertible, yeah.
Nice. All right, be careful with those switchbacks. Who wants to kick it off? This is honestly just an open AMA. This is for the culture and community. So don't be shy. You don't have to go first, but somebody has to.
I'll do it.
You'll do it? All right, come on. We got to do it with the mic. Please don't make this about Bitcoin Cash.
No, it's not about Bitcoin Cash. Thank you. But yeah, so anyway, I'm Randy. I have something called the Space DAO. And I remember when Blockstream started, it was all about satellites and space. And when I met you, Adam, in 2018, I asked about, you said you were just using radio. And then all of a sudden the space thing kind of got taken off the table. So I was wondering, is there any plans with Blockstream to go forward into space?
Well, we do have a next generation on that in development, but for the moment it's broadcast only via geostationary satellites, so we're just leasing bandwidth. I mean, actually launching satellites is super expensive for the big ones, and if you launch small ones, you need lots of them, and you need big dishes. So just leasing bandwidth on geostationary is the most cost-effective way, and gives you cheap ground equipment to receive it.
So what's space? Is that moon or is that Mars? You looking for something more?
I don't know. I mean, it sounds. I was just wondering if they were still doing something with that because they raised a lot of money and then all of a sudden there was no more space.
All right. Give it time. Moon, Mars, Uranus. Let's go. Yes.
All right. Adam, thanks for coming to New York. So every time I do an interview with you, I always ask the same question. What is the current status of Liquid, and why is it taking so long for it to actually get some traction? I have some theories, which we've discussed on podcasts, but man, when is it going to finally be like the shitcoin killer and the privacy solution for Bitcoin transactions? Why aren't people realizing how useful it is?
I think the retail users are starting to use it more heavily now because of this phenomena of the nodeless Lightning wallet, which is actually a Liquid wallet, but I just don't realize it, right? So it's storing its balances in Liquid Bitcoin, and then it's swapping for Lightning using Bolt's exchange. When you send and when you receive, you swap via Bolt's exchange for a liquid Bitcoin. And that gives you actually a similar kind of feel in terms of reliability and amortizing the cost of the channels as a custodial wallet, except it's not custodial. I mean, you're holding liquid Bitcoin, so there's some decentralization there compared to like Wallet of Satoshi or something. So that's the consumer end, and that's growing quite quickly. It started with Aqua Wallet, but now All Bitcoin has done one, Peach Bitcoin has done one, Breeze Wallet has integrated this nodeless, and there are more of them, so there's probably half a dozen or more at this point. So that's the consumer side, and then on the kind of securitization tokens, on the
Right on that goatee. That's like, you got that goatee, and Andreas Antonopoulos has the, you know what I mean. It's iconic hair.
Okay. So the other side of things, there are some MicroStrategy shares in a security token on Liquid via Stocker. So it's the only 24/7 market to trade MicroStrategy, and it's actually priced in Bitcoin, sort of a non-custodial trading platform called SideSwap that on a weekend will do about the same volume as the German, the Frankfurt ADR on MicroStrategy. So you're getting those kind of things going on, and then another kind of use case is promissory notes, so small business loans in Mexico that are securitized. There's about $1 billion of those, and growing about 100 million a month. So it's, the thing is, they're all real things with organic use. So they're not, there's a lot of kind of faking metrics in altcoin land. They park their own money or own printed money into tokens and issue the tokens, and they're not really real, organic. So I think that's one thing. And then, more recently, we've entered into the institutional asset management space, which Sean can talk about a bit soon, because that's his background. So that will be, more another source of money into this kind of ecosystem.
But Liquid is still somewhat higher priority, like development and maintenance. Like you don't have to worry about this going away.
Oh no, Liquid is our most, biggest technology investment.
Yes.
Hey, Adam, I have a question about Liquid. So Liquid seems like it currently uses a multi-sig. So what do you think about switching from 11 or 15 to something like an MPC protocol where you could have very large scalability? MPC really, at the upper bounds of it, if you use like a GVSS protocol, some kind of multi-party computation where all the nodes work together, then you can have a very large set of validator nodes as opposed to limited to 15.
Well, I think you can get to a similar place with Musig and Frost, so kind of just slightly more efficient multi-sig. But I think the risks with MPC is those protocols are quite complicated and interactive. So there have been cases where people have had bugs in the crypto because it's very few people that can review it, and it's quite easy to make a mistake in a complicated protocol. So yeah, we can, I think once we migrate over to Musig and Schnorr signatures, basically, we can get to a bigger set. I think the other thing that's probably a bigger bottleneck, though, is the coordination, because you've got to reach consensus among the nodes about what transactions are in the block, and that has some kind of n-squared scaling properties, right? So there's probably some natural limit where you don't want to go too high for communication.
Is it the communication in the network?
Yeah, you need like, if it's 15, you need 15 of them to reach consensus, and they.
Threshold, so you can do threshold through a dealer and blind it all.
No, but I'm saying you've got to agree on what you're going to sign, because you're all going to sign it, right? And so you've got to coordinate that. So you end up with multiple rounds, even with ECDSA or Schnorr, you've got maybe 3 rounds of communication, and then you've got to coordinate the block, like what you're going to sign, because they have to agree on what they're signing and that it's valid. So you end up, if you do hundreds of them, it will start to become a lot of communication. That's what I'm saying, and then that will.
That's what I'm saying. Use the dealer, and then it's linear. You run it through dealer, but you blind it through the dealer, so it's encrypted through the dealer. The dealer just routes.
I don't think so. I mean, I think people have been trying to do. I mean, if you take an adversarial view on consensus, it's not so easy, right? If you just say, well, there's a master and he's going to choose, okay, but then you haven't verified it, and yeah. So anyway, there's a lot of communication in there. I think that's the point.
Well, you're log in if you gossip it.
Okay.
All right. Just one quick note. We are upgrading the audio here, but if you stand right in front of that, we're going to get a little bit of that ring. So just try not to block the, like right there. I don't mean to single you out, but you know what I mean. All right.
Hey, this question's for, I mean, really all of you, but specifically Adam. So you easily, as like, the inventor of Hashcash, like celebrity in this room, et cetera, you easily could have like gone into the ether and like disappeared and just like lived off your Bitcoin and all that kind of stuff. What motivates you to continue to come to these things, continue to work on your projects, and continue to be part of the Bitcoin world and bless us with your presence, I guess, and your knowledge?
I don't know about blessing, I think, but I mean, it's very fun, right? Like we're all having fun talking about Bitcoin, building things on Bitcoin, trying to improve Bitcoin. So it's really about the mission of, doing what we each can to help Bitcoin reach its potential. So I think that's kind of underlying theme of everything.
Culture and community. What do you guys think about? We're going to go to the next question. What do you think about culture and community and its level of importance, for Bitcoin going forward here?
I wanted to answer this question about what motivates me. So I was born in Soviet Union, and I don't know how many of you experienced a currency change in your life, like literally the change of the currency. Can you raise a hand? Yeah, I did it 4 times. So in my country, we changed currency 4 times. And you don't need to sell me the idea of Bitcoin, because every time it was very painful, literally for people. And when I saw that with my grandparents, with my parents, when I discovered Bitcoin, it was like the thing that actually allows you to not change anything. You can be individual, separated from the state, whatever they do, whether they change fiat, whether they change to another mumbo jumbo type of stuff. That motivates me to build stuff on Bitcoin, actually. So yeah, that's my answer.
Here. Sean, culture and community.
One of my professors once said that culture trumps strategy every time. And so I think the culture that surrounds the Bitcoin ecosystem is really what generates the success. Obviously, there are a lot of altcoins and shitcoins and what have you that have these huge treasuries that they're spending on all these strategic initiatives and what we're seeing in Washington these days, et cetera. But I think ultimately the strength of Bitcoin is the community. Getting all these folks that are showing up tonight is kind of a testament to that.
Yeah, I've actually noticed that the Bitcoin memes are far higher quality. Like shitcoiners can't meme because their heart isn't in it. It doesn't really mean anything, right?
We didn't even need a monkey NFT or anything to get it done with the Bored Ape Yacht Club.
This is an easy winner. Anyone who's technically minded, feel free to chime in. On a scale of 0 to meow, how much do you love cat?
So OpCat. I wish Udi was here for this one.
I mean, I'm in favor of Bitcoin having some covenant capabilities, mostly for the Vault use case, but Lightning or anything else. But I don't really have strong opinions about which covenant opcode, just that the technical community reaches consensus on which ones are good. I guess the argument in favor of CAT is that it has no design parameters, so there's less bike shedding, so it might get done sooner. So one argument is start with cat and then see what comes next, which probably means stop with cat as well. Right?
But cat can be recursive, right? Like I don't want KYC coin.
Go ahead. Can cat be recursive?
The way Bitcoin works is you control, when you are receiving funds, you control the conditions which allow you to spend them in the future. They're your coins. So KYC coin doesn't exist because when you're receiving payment, you're not going to lock your Bitcoin up in a vault that permanently keeps you from spending it. That doesn't make sense. You're going to run your own software
No,
that
but
generates.
Coinbase will.
Yeah, but then that means that their coins are locked up. That's not a you problem. They just burn their coins forever. You have your own coins still. People have the right to custody their funds however they want, right? So like that's just their prerogative.
No, it's okay. That happens sometimes. Yes, sir.
Hello. Hey, Adam. I have a question, an ideological question. So, between cypherpunk and statism, I'm noticing that some patriotic individuals are pushing certain states to stockpile Bitcoin and to sort of turn Bitcoin into a game between states, where all of us thought as Bitcoin as a game between individuals in a borderless world. How do you reconcile cypherpunk ideals and statism and patriotism?
Well, I mean, some people are excited about the sovereign Bitcoin reserves, but personally, I think it'd be okay if they don't buy Bitcoin. It gives individuals more time to buy Bitcoin. Now, sovereign wealth funds and things already buy other kinds of assets, right? They'll buy real estate and bonds and stocks and all kinds of stuff, right? So eventually they might, and some of them have actually, right, bought Bitcoin already, some sovereign wealth funds. So, it's a free market, we can't really stop them, but I wouldn't necessarily personally kind of on the fence about whether it's necessarily a good idea to, because as soon as they do it, they'll get competitive with each other. Like a big country does it, then other countries will want to do it, and then Bitcoin will become less affordable for the individual. So, yeah.
Yeah, I would add that I think that the fact that they're even discussing it means that maybe there's starting to be some discussions about sound money, right? That maybe they weren't even thinking about or talking about. And I think the reaction to the last, decades worth of, zero interest rates, quantitative easing, all this spending is maybe now actually having a counter movement. And that's why you're seeing the states. You have 23 states that are looking at establishing strategic reserves in Bitcoin, and of course the international governments. I think at this point, if it doesn't happen right now, that's good for retail and for people to have an opportunity to accumulate more. And I kind of think we're at a phase now where we're towards the end of the period where any individual will own a whole Bitcoin, right? I mean, the cost is getting so high, so.
We got a question in the back, but as I go back there, Adam, the color of the hat is correct. How did you come to get that hat?
I went to, Alan Farrington asked me to go to a Bitcoin conference in Edinburgh, Scotland. It's the first Bitcoin conference there. And OKCoin was sponsoring the McLaren racing team for tens of millions of dollars a year, so I heard. But anyway, they were giving out hats.
And I was
like,
wasn't at the dealership. It was
no. I want to sell Bitcoin to buy a sports car. No. No, it's just that it turns out that the McLaren team color is like Bitcoin color, so I'm like, this is good.
Yeah, thank you. Honored to be in front of all you legends too. Just a quick question. I know the topic was more so around lending. We're not selling with Bitcoin. I'm curious to hear from whoever could answer. Given what we know about centralized counterparty risk, how hard it is to decentralize the lending and the borrowing, how do you foresee this moving forward, let's say in the next 3-4 years, in Bitcoin land as market continues to grow, risk continues to increase, and there's more demand for lending and borrowing on chain?
Yeah, you just don't need to put your money with the custodian. I mean, there's like multi-sig solutions that for example, Debifi and HODL and Unchained are doing, which means that you as a borrower, you have a key, lender has a key, and there's like a third party who has a key. So basically, you avoid by that being rug pulled by the central authority, which is effectively custodian. So I think that the lending will probably shift into more non-custodial setups. This is actually one of the things that Blockstream Asset Management is planning to do. So they're planning to go into Bitcoin lending, but they're planning to use multi-sig-based solutions. So there's no central point of failure in terms of like custodying your funds.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, and I think that's actually what allocators want to hear, right? They don't want to face a Celsius or even Coinbase today or whatever. One of the things that we're trying to do at Blockstream is we like to try to solve the problems and the bottlenecks in the ecosystem, and one of the clear and obvious ones is that there's a need for more dollars to be able to be available to borrow against your Bitcoin so that you can unlock some of that capital without having to sell it, right? Because and I see people shaking their heads in the back there, like, oh, wait a minute, maybe not. But we actually think it's an important thing because what's the alternative? If you can't borrow against it, then you're selling it if you need to access it. And we know it's probably one of the best forms of collateral that's available. It's 24/7 liquidity. It's an easy structure. We think that the pension funds and the endowment funds and the foundations is a great way to kind of really democratize access to Bitcoin. There's a lot of the folks that, like when I was in the CIO of a pension plan, we had a lot of bus drivers and train operators and civil service workers that maybe didn't have a 401k or really didn't have much of an excess savings, weren't really in a position to accumulate Bitcoin. So when we were trying to get Bitcoin into the pension funds, we started in 2019, we really kind of viewed it as like the ultimate democratization of access to Bitcoin. And that took us a couple years to get it done because people just don't understand it. When you have these pension boards, they typically have lay people that are maybe are the supervisor of the bus drivers, or they are the captain of the fire department, or what have you, and may not be really up to speed on these things. Otherwise, I don't think they would ever really encounter it if you weren't trying to take action to bring it to them. And so it's kind of a win-win. I mean, the ecosystem needs access to dollars. The pensions and the endowments and the foundations need access to contractual cash flow. And this is a very simple idea of asset-based lending, direct lending. So it's pretty plug and play.
Great. Yeah.
So my question is about regulated stablecoins like Bank of America coin. What do y'all think about its utility, especially compared to very unregulated stablecoins like Tether's coin? Right? Do fully regulated bank level like stablecoins have any utility comparatively?
I mean, bank stablecoin, it depends what they do, but I think it seems that central bank stablecoins are not going to be desirable to users because they seem to have envy for Chinese social credit score type of things, right? And the average user doesn't want anything to do with it. So I think that would stop it. But banks are in the service industry, so perhaps they could make something usable. Depends on how they view the regulations and how they make the functionality. But like certainly the current stablecoins are much more usable, probably.
It's like Clear versus the TSA when you take the photo, right? You got a private company, you got one thing, and then it's the government. Like, I'll use Clear. There's no differentiator, I guess. But it's kind of how it operates currently, right? Like, just it's a balance sheet game, and there's more visibility and granularity and all that.
And there's still really clearly a need within the ecosystem for even just like intra-exchange transfers. Like with Signet having gone down and Customers Bank, and the issues there that they're under. There's still, I think, you could easily show a $20 billion market for a very high velocity stablecoin just servicing B2B exchanges.
Hello. Hey, guys. So, Adam, I've spoken to you on chat a couple times in the Blockstream chat. I'm a TradFi volatility guy, so old guy, been around trading derivatives for a long time, and vol in Bitcoin is pretty much a feature. It's not a bug. I think it's an asset class that can be monetized. We had chatted about MicroStrategy converts, because given the fact that the embedded volatility is actually priced a little bit lower, and the fact that Bitcoin volatility in itself is probably somewhat mispriced. What would be the best possible venue to package and sell this product where we could do it off of not completely custodied by third parties or put somewhere else? Does Liquid do that? Is there a better venue for that? Because we can actually see that there's a huge amount of demand for this, both from the yield side, the protection side. Those are the kind of strategies we've been running for a while. So what would be the best way to go about that?
I mean, for traders, I think it would be interesting to bring more of those products into the tokenized world. So with Liquid and AMP, you have access to MicroStrategy shares in a tokenized format. You can transfer them down to 1/100th of a share. So you could settle a lunch bill with a few hundredths of MicroStrategy shares in a way that feels very Bitcoin-like, except that you have to enroll with Stocker, which is the share registration agent, to join, to start using it. But once you have it, it feels more Bitcoin-like. And within Liquid, there are covered calls, so you could make call options or put options, so to capture the volatility. And I think it'd be interesting to have the MicroStrategy convertible notes in there as well. So basically, you've got the phenomena with Bitcoin exchanges that there are not that many varieties of things you can do, right? You've got Bitcoin options, Bitcoin perpetual futures, dated futures, spot Bitcoin, leverage. That's it. That's all anybody, and that's been the case for years and years now. So in terms of getting some more innovation, I think having MicroStrategy in that picture, having access to the convertible note trade, the gamma trading, the arbitrage, and maybe structured products around it that automate that. I mean, there's a MicroStrategy ETF which is selling options, right? MSTY. So there are interesting things you can do with these derivatives for people that like to trade things. It's nice to have access to those things, and for people who just want a net effect, then something could be constructed with it once you have access to it. So somebody could make a fund with some extra properties.
From a larger perspective, though, if you had a pool of capital that you could use the actual underlying Bitcoin derivatives, which are better priced, MicroStrategy converts or kind of walled away. Other products are a little bit more, there are walls between them and price liquidity. You could trade on derivatives, a million mega immediately, right? So there's actually a way of doing this and putting it there. The problem is most people don't want to have layers and layers behind. My question is, if I were to take an institutional product like that, what's the best on-chain way of doing it? Or whatever you guys have together with Blockstream, Debifi, is there a solution?
I mean, there are some exchanges which are getting the ability to hold securities. I mean, it's partly a regulatory thing, right? They can trade Bitcoin or Bitcoin derivatives, or they do. I mean, it's maybe not so clear what the licensing are, but MicroStrategy itself is a security, and then you've got derivatives on the security. But there are now probably a handful of exchanges that could do that. They could do Bitcoin, they could do ETFs, they could do options, and they can do shares and other things. So I think there's clear demand for having a crossover exchange that's got traditional finance features, and of course the Bitcoin correlated stocks are the most interesting thing for Bitcoiners to trade.
All right, let's keep it going.
Yeah, so we've got some interesting different perspectives, I think, of people who are up here on this podium. Max, I think it's fair to say you're like hardcore self-custody, peer-to-peer, fuck the man type of like, this is how we should go about doing
During the
Bitcoin
night.
stuff. Yeah, yeah.
During the day, I'm just like a regular trade-fi guy.
Yeah. Now, I think it's interesting with Adam because you do have a lot more. You're much more on the TradFi trading side. Like, you're interested in a lot of these other bridging type of strategies. These centralized entities that are using Bitcoin for new financial strategies. I'm interested to kind of see the two of you butt heads or fight over, what do you see as like the conflict of, perhaps the systemic risk versus the game theory of obviously the people entering into these strategies, trying to play these new games of, everybody's just out for themselves, but if we're taking the mile-high view, stepping back and looking at Bitcoin as a system, like, is this good for Bitcoin? Is this bad for Bitcoin? Obviously, it's some of both, but
it's probably inevitable.
Yeah,
right?
It may be inevitable. Is there anything we can even do, or do we just throw up our hands? Like, is there anything that we can do to, like, get Michael Saylor, for example, to take his fucking coins off of Coinbase, put them somewhere else, continue doing what he's doing, and hopefully reduce some of the systemic risk in the system?
Yeah, I mean, the concentration of custody coins from ETFs in Coinbase is concerning as well. Presumably, that would change as more banks are now able to do custody. Now, I think the current crop of exchanges in a Bitcoin space are almost all custodial, and I think that's not necessary. I think it's just a kind of, that was the easiest thing to build and it stuck, right? So, there are a few different decentralized or centralized but non-custodial market services or functions in built on top of Liquid. The one that's probably more popular is SideSwap. So it's a central order book, but it's non-custodial, so you can place a limit order from a hardware wallet, like from a Jade wallet. I think Ledger has Liquid support as well. And then, use a normal interface to set up your order. You click OK, your hardware wallet pops up, and you are approving the parameters of the trade on the hardware wallet. You sort of partially sign that, and that partially signed limit order goes to the order book, and then you can go offline. And if it matches, it will become valid and it'll get settled on the Liquid chain. And when you come back online, you'll have less tether and you'll have more Bitcoin or whatever you're doing, right? So it's possible to do a lot of things like that, including mix those kind of orders into a custodial order book, because they can just simply match the non-custodial orders against their hot wallet, and then they've kind of merged those two types of trades. So that would be a nice bit of technology to see deployed into exchanges, because it's a differentiator, right? Now you can trade without exchange custody risk. And the other direction, which is kind of reaction to FTX, is that now a lot of the custodians are, in a traditional finance world, if you're trading on E-Trade or something like that, the shares are not held by E-Trade, they're held by a separate custodian. And it's to avoid a conflict of interest in a bankruptcy scenario. And yet, in Bitcoin, that's not the case. So since FTX, the traders got sufficiently upset to insist that would be the case. And so now there are some custodians which are doing what they call trilateral agreements. They agree with an exchange that the custodian will hold the Bitcoin or Tether or whatever you're trading with. They'll agree that the exchange can trade with it, like give you an IOU you can trade with. But if the exchange goes bankrupt, you're going to keep your coins and not get haircut or bailed into it. So that's the kind of, that's one type of solution, but that's a centralized solution. I think the non-custodial one is better, and you can do a lot of things with that, right? You can do covered call options, you can do offline kind of limit orders. So I think you could build a lot of what exists today in a trustless way like that, including loans, right? There's a guy who wrote some kind of loan structures as a liquid contract as well. So you can do that. It's just that people are, I guess, focused on doing the easy thing until it fails, and then they take evasive action.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I would add to that I think it's an evolutionary process for these folks, like BlackRock holding stuff at Coinbase, right, or Sailor holding at Coinbase, and kind of first step is just to get them crawling, right, get them into the market, right, and then hopefully they will start to learn more about it, and then they will make that progression to maybe, hey, let's custodian the asset, right, and then hey, maybe it's crawl, walk. And walk is that custodian. Maybe run is okay. Now we're self-custody, but that evolution through those types of organizations, I think, will take a lot longer than we would ever expect it to, because they're like like government type entity with like a BlackRock. I mean, it moves very slow and very bureaucratic.
So I think the having covenants and ability to make a vault would make self-custody or third-party custody a lot safer, because the clear risk is if the attacker gets hold of your seed, then it's game over immediately, right? Whereas with a vault, that can be undone for a limited time period, right? So that would be an improvement for self-custody or an improvement for a custodian. And actually, I think MicroStrategy has some of their coins with Fidelity. I think one of the analytic companies figured it, like chased it down, and thinks that some of them are there, which is a little better, but it'd be better if they had it themselves.
Yeah, I was going to say, it might actually be a greater systemic risk to have the BlackRock folks holding their own keys right now. It might actually be a safer where they're at in their development along the educational curve for them to actually have someone involved with that.
I don't know. That's a lot of Bitcoin at Coinbase.
I
hear what you're saying, but that's a lot. You had one?
Hey guys, what do you think the transaction fee outlook over the long term for Bitcoin looks like? What's kind of the future of inscriptions and ordinals, and you think miners are going to get transaction fees of some reasonable, significant amount? What does that look like? Was this like flash in the pan, or you think this is a growing and interesting part of the Bitcoin ecosystem?
There's no future for inscriptions and ordinals.
Oh, I love this question, though. You have these Eiffel... No, this is actually a really great question. You have these Eiffel Towers that happen.
so
if you look at hash price, right? The fee spike that occurred, that was a much needed breath of fresh air for miners, and they're all sort of like really pining for that to be a thing. How do we transition from the block subsidy and spike transaction fees? I love that question.
I mean, the transactions will be more expensive, definitely, as Bitcoin price will grow, but it's not because of ordinals and inscriptions. Because like Bitcoiners are too smart to buy into NFT stuff, like stupid cats and monkeys on a chain. So, sorry, I mean, no offense to shitcoiners. But definitely, I mean, I don't see there's a future for ordinals. Inscriptions already dead at the moment. Like literally, it was just hyping around.
I guess like as a substitute for trademarks and everything else, right? Like it's not about putting something specific, but if you have a network with the best possible security and imprint,
yeah, it's still like
does the utility of that mean anything to
I think
within a
the
block?
copyright lawyers will disagree with you probably on that, on the trademark stuff. So they don't care about blockchain too much at this point. So I think.
Well, does open timestamps have value, right?
Yeah.
Like a notary service.
Yeah.
Like the documentation of a thing at a specific moment in time, in the immutable ledger, like there is value embedded therein.
Right, but that takes almost no space though, because they put a tree of potentially lots of document checksums, right? So it takes almost no space. But that's useful for like proof of a timestamp or something.
Yeah, but text message or an email does the same thing, right?
Sort of. I don't know. It'd be nice to see a court case, right? That wants to verify that this was, almost the documentation, like a notary service. That open timestamps is really interesting. I actually totally agree. Inscriptions and ordinals, not for the JPEGs and things like that. It's like graffiti in the Roman Forum. It stays there. I agree with Junseth, with this analogy. There is something important embedded therein in somebody taking time to chisel, even if it's dick memes in the Roman Forum, but it stays there for millennia. Next question. Yeah.
Hey, thanks, Thomas. Hey, GC from Jersey City Bitcoiners, what's up? I'm very curious about, outside of covenants, outside of maybe cross-input signature aggregation, outside of a ZK verifier, when is Bitcoin done? Will we ever get there? What are you guys looking for as maybe your finalized soft fork or of the like? Anything we're not already talking about?
Well, I think the Simplicity script system is a shot at that. So it predates Blockstream. This guy, Russell O'Connor, was trying to re-implement a Bitcoin node using Haskell and found a bunch of Bitcoin internal bugs because you find inconsistencies if you try to re-implement it. And then he was talking about Merkle, MOST, and apparently what he was thinking about was Simplicity when he was talking about that. So it's a cool kind of script 2.0, which is very low level and formally provable. So, it could be made efficient because you can have jets, which are kind of library functions, high-level things that are implemented using those, and then you make a C implementation and you formally prove that it's equivalent. And so the upshot of it all is that Bitcoin becomes sort of extensible using a microcode-like low-level language. And so something like Schnorr could be implemented without a soft fork if you had it, right? Now, it might not be efficient, but you've got access to lots of libraries, which, all the crypto libraries, which would make that efficient. And so, that has a prospect of being the last soft fork, as it were, right? Because the updates you make after that are about efficiency, not about changing their capabilities. And unlike the kind of Turing-complete EVM machines, it's intentionally not Turing-complete, and you can prove things formally about it, and it's still in the UTXO model. So I would say you could reasonably argue it's going to be more secure than Bitcoin script because Bitcoin script, there's been a lot of verification of it, but it's not formally provable. So it's just sort of secure because it's been a lot of care and debugging and stuff, right? Whereas with Simplicity, it's at the bottom level, it's just 9 operators, and the operators are very simple bit-level Boolean logic kind of things. So they're very clearly defined things, and everything's built out of them. So you have a lot more confidence in the semantics of what's happening. So I think that that's something like that will take a long time. Like we should have it in liquid life pretty soon, like in the next month or two, after many years of development. But for other things that started life in liquid and made their way to Bitcoin, I think one example took 5 years, one took 8 years. So you can see that there's a long path for complicated things or even simple things to get into Bitcoin. But I think it has a lot of potential for getting to ossification without cutting off functionality you might end up needing in layer 1 to support layer 2.
Is ossification a thing?
I think it's desirable, but we can't really do it today because it's kind of half ossified because it's moving slowly, right? But it's I think it's considered desirable because it gets harder to change things and there's more value in it. It could get more political, so it's probably safer to stop changing it. And there's also risk of change, right? Technical risk coming from change. So particularly on the consensus rules. So if there's a way to sort of make it self-extensible and stop, that's good. And I think there's an early Bitcoin talk post by Satoshi saying that he rushed the script system so that it could be frozen in all time. So he was sort of talking about ossification as a motivation for adding the script system. but it didn't. It doesn't quite do it right, and some of it was disabled.
It's a bit antithetical for open source, though, right?
I mean, it's more about like safety, and some widely used low-level things are relatively ossified. Like, TCP/IP hasn't really changed. I mean, it's IPv6, but like the other stuff hasn't changed in decades, and it doesn't really hurt us because we just have a dependable layer, and then we do everything above it, right? So I think it would be probably safer if Bitcoin could get to that state.
Hi, Jake Tom. I am curious, when you look at the roadmap for the adoption curve of Bitcoin, we've had spot Bitcoin ETFs. We see now that there are Bitcoin-based networks to support stablecoin transactions. I'm curious what you believe is the next turn or the next key feature for the Bitcoin adoption curve.
Well, Sean and I were on some panels earlier today at the Bitcoin Investor Week conference, and Sean was a manager of a pension fund that was the first pension fund to add Bitcoin on a balance sheet, and I think that it's difficult to get pension funds to participate in Bitcoin, and ultimately the money in the pension funds is, the average person in the population, so it's actually useful to get money from that exposed to Bitcoin in some way or other. So I think that's what we've been calling the third wave. If the first wave was, people getting into Bitcoin via exchanges early on, the second wave was the ETFs. But the institutions like the pension funds, endowments, they are, some of them have an allocation, but it's extremely small, so it's very, very early. So I think that's the next kind of inflow and adoption that benefits the individual indirectly.
Sean? Max?
Yeah, I think that banks in general, next step, when every Bitcoiner can go to the bank and say, I want to borrow against my Bitcoin, or I want to send my Bitcoin to the account. Like in Switzerland, it's already happening.
That's why I got into Bitcoin.
Yeah. I know it's controversial, but it's a curve. We cannot avoid that. Like in Switzerland, if you go in Zurich, for example, from the central station, there will be a huge banner by the cantonal bank of Zurich saying, you got Bitcoin, come to us, open an account, we can lend you money, we can give you credit cards. We're not afraid of that. So I think the next step is banks en masse globally adopting Bitcoin, and then they will move to non-custodial setups. They will learn. They will move to other stuff. But it's about us to build an infrastructure for them.
Non-custodial for them, but custodial for me.
Why?
In a way, if I use that bank and, I'm sort of
interacting. If it's a multi-sig and bank just holding one of the keys and you're holding the other key, still non-custodial.
It's devil's advocate. I understand where you're getting at. It's, adoption and, it might be good, but,
we're getting boring.
There's a devil therein.
Bitcoiners are getting boring, Everyone's talking about banks, ETFs, et cetera,
No, we have fun here. We're not boring. Let's go.
Well,
Next.
I was going to say, I think that where you'll see the next wave of adoption is really, it's harder to see it in the U.S. or Western Europe where things function pretty well with your money. And, you could disintermediate a Visa or MasterCard and, knock their fees down. And that's great for consumers and what have you. But I think over in the emerging markets, all of us were in El Salvador not long ago. I think, making these hot wallets easy to use. We went to Bitcoin Beach, and, you can, buy things with your Lightning, and, it works. They use it. I think, in countries like that where, I guess El Salvador has the dollar, so maybe it's not the best example, but a lot of Latin American countries, like we had people from Guatemala that were approaching us and asking us, for updates on the progress, like could we get down to a $10 jade, for cold storage, and we're like, that is a big challenge, but I think that's where you'll see these things blossom, is these emerging markets, Southeast Asia, Latin America, Africa, we're already seeing it. Those are the places where I think you're going to see it really do what it was maybe originally intended to do, and then it will eventually find its way here, and find its way to Europe.
We need more like Tyrion Lannister, right? Those are scary men at our gates. Let's go kill them. The sovereign individual Bitcoiners. We got time for a couple more questions if anybody wants to chime in. Huh? On the L2s? If you have a question, comment. I don't. Anything on the L2s? Anything more specific? BTC L2s. I think we covered liquid. And liquid and lightning. Do you have any more comments about? I think Aqua is doing a really good job elevating, sort of a harmonization of the L2s in the Bitcoin space. I don't know if you have any comments on that. No. Any other questions? Yeah, back here.
Hi, this is a bit of a newbie question, but when you're talking about pension funds and adoption of using Bitcoin, and I just wanted to sort of understand the sort of thinking that was around dealing with the volatility and how that was a sort of, how did that factor into this decision about adoption? I think if I understood what you said before, it was quite a process, it was quite a project. And so, clearly that's got to have been a question that, the average account manager is going to pose to you. So what that sort of process looked like.
No, it definitely is a question you see very early in the discussion. So I mean, the way we framed it was for the pension funds. If you think about a pension fund, they generally have three buckets that they're allocating to. It's kind of a growth bucket, which is something that we're looking for a principal gain to drive the return. The second bucket would be a contractual income bucket, right, where we're looking for contractual cash flows. And then the third bucket is really typically what we'd call like diversifying assets, and that's your farmland, your timber, your mineral rights, your gold, things like that. And so when we were trying to frame the context of these conversations in the Silicon Valley, we really started with the gold sample because it was something that was tangible, that some of the pensions, I was a trustee for the city of San Jose's pension, and I was on the San Francisco hedge fund selection committee and the CIO of Santa Clara's. And so one common thread that you'll find through these portfolios is that there's usually a couple gold bugs that sit on these boards. And so that's where the language, if you can speak that language to them, you can kind of start to have the conversation, right? And so, if you think about Bitcoin, like gold, it's a limited supply. It's convertible into any currency anywhere in the world. You can't counterfeit it. Blah blah blah. And so they can grab onto that, and they will grab onto that. So then you get to the volatility question, right? Because then it's like, well, geez, Sean, it's a lot more volatile than gold. And then so this is if you think about portfolio construction from a 30,000 foot level, it's like baking a cake, right? So when you're making a cake, you got a lot of different ingredients. You got salt, you got flour, you got sugar, you got some yeast, right? Maybe yeast is your Bitcoin, that's your growth engine, right? And so any one of those by itself may not taste that great. But when you combine them together, you get that beautiful cake. And that's kind of how we had to kind of frame it for the pension board members is, we're trying to bake a cake. And we're trying to get you the best results and the best risk-adjusted performance. So that volatility is not necessarily a negative because you're zigging when other assets are zagging, and it actually gives you a smoother return. And going back to my days at the Chicago Board of Trade when we're in the commodity pits, volatility can be a good thing, right? And I think somebody else was talking about volatility earlier, being a good thing. And so long as it's skewing higher, in general, upside volatility should not be penalized, and the Sharpe ratios and things like that will penalize you when it looks at that. So it can kind of steer you in the wrong direction. So you got to have that conversation probably about 8 times with the investment committees and the consultants and the pension boards, and then you got to do this sidebar with the investment chair, and you got to go meet the consultant for lunch, and you got to have it again, and then you got they might forget, and then they can't. So you got to go back and do it one more time, and that's why it takes us several years, to get these things done, or in the old days. I mean, now I think it's 5 years ago, right? I think today it's a very different climate.
All right, 2 more.
As pristine collateral, when will terms get better for borrowers?
Well, that's exactly why we're getting into the business, because there's a technical. No, I think there's a technical dislocation in this market, right? I mean, it's not well understood. If we can bring more dollars into the market, right, to lend against that pristine collateral, that will inevitably bring down yields. So, in a perfect world, Adam and I will get to do the hedge fund business for 10 years, then we'll be out of business. That'd be fine. I mean, that would achieve the goals of making those capital markets more efficient.
So soon?
Well, it depends how much money.
About 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. Keep an eye on Debifi. We'll be working with those fellas there.
As we will onboard more and more lenders, actually we already see that. So when we started, the average rate was 16%, and last week we just did single-digit loan. It was 9%. So because what we've built effectively, it's like institutional peer-to-peer. We have a marketplace, like I call it like eBay for loans, for Bitcoin loans. It's basically, we have these institutions. We have now 20 different liquidity providers from different parts of the world, and they compete with each other for borrowers. But another thing is that, I mean, it's a wishful thinking by Bitcoiners that they think it's a pristine collateral and I should get 1% APR. No, it's not true, because lenders, they do understand the value proposition of Bitcoin. They do understand that you are borrowing now because you don't want to sell, because you want to avoid capital gain tax in most of the countries in the world, and because Bitcoin has such a high potential that in 1 year you can earn 100%. So if you sell now, you're probably going to lose that 100%. But if you borrow, you might pay like 10% per year. You're going to get 90% still left in your pocket. So they do understand that, and that's why the rates are really high.
But I would say, you could make a case long term. I mean, let's say that we move towards an efficient market over time. Why wouldn't Bitcoin trade inside of treasuries, right? I mean, if you think about a treasury bond at 4.25%, with $35 trillion of debt, aging population, blah blah blah, or you have 21 million Bitcoin tokens that's it, right? You could make a case that Bitcoin eventually, who knows when, but should be trading in line with treasuries or even inside of treasuries.
All right, last question.
So Bitcoin loans are obviously something that's maturing now as part of the Bitcoin ecosystem. What do you think are the other missing components of the ecosystem that people need to build for Bitcoin adjacent stuff?
Fiat on and off ramps. That's still a big challenge for the ecosystem. We hear that all the time from all kinds of different folks, and there's a few banks that will touch it, and then. Most recently, Customers Bank was, taking on the business that Signet used to have, and then, well, gee whiz, all of a sudden you get the knock on the door, and you got 30 regulators parked in your lobby, and eventually that has to be closed down, right? So, I think fiat on-off ramps. This is why I was saying earlier. I think in our panel that, or I don't know where it was, maybe it was on the podcast, that I think one of the most important things that can happen right now is that we make sure that Bitcoin has appropriate representation within Washington to kind of help steer the regulation, because right now you got all the altcoiners going in there burning cash, to get seats on these advisory councils. You got the Cardanos, the Ripples, etc. And the Bitcoiners is a community thing, but there's no ICO token out there that people are just going to burn on lobbyists and trying to protect the interest of the community. So I think that's an important piece of that for the ecosystem. So to help get those fiat on-off ramps straightened out, it means we got to have good regulation on that.
Here. All right, the final. There's one more. This is near and dear to my heart. This is a good question.
Hi, yeah. When Peter Todd was here a number of months ago, he was a pretty strong advocate of Bitcoin, eventually needing to adopt some kind of tail emission protocol. I was curious, particularly Adam, like what your take on that is and if you have any kind of alternative idea on that.
I mean, I think that's going to be very difficult to get anybody to agree to. It's like it breaks the 21 million limit, which is pretty much the most important property almost, right? But I also don't think it's necessary really because, you know, at least for many years now and probably into the future, the Bitcoin price has gone up more than double, a lot more than double every 4 years, right? And I think, you know, the fee market is reasonably efficient. So, you know, only a certain number of transactions can clear, and so, you know, you get a price, and if there are excess transactions, it pushes out the less fee-paying ones or pushes them off into layer 2s. So I think there's reasonable prospect for the fees to replace the subsidy, and also in any case, there's like a very high, you know, there's $2 trillion of capital that needs Bitcoin to work, and humans need hard money that works. So I think they will find a way to make it work, even if it's, you know, any company and individuals doing a bit of mining to mutually secure the network or something like that, right? There are other situations like that, like internet peering is a bit like that, right? That you've got different people who want to use the internet. They pay ISPs to get service from the internet, and the ISPs are just swapping data flow without necessarily paying for it or tit for tat pricing or something like that. So I think there are multiple ways, and like any other form of money is, you know, we rely on far less secure means of money, right? The current system is depending on audit of a few thousand banks or something, right? Which could be doing bad things. So it's extremely insecure in comparison.
One of my favorite conference panels ever, it wasn't a panel, it was one man, good friend of mine, Eric Voskuil, at the Baltic Honey Badger in 2022, did an AP calculus course on Peter Todd's suggestion proposal on tail emissions. I think everybody left the room except for me and Peter Todd. He was sitting there, he didn't know what was about to happen, and he did like the roaring kitty meme where he like sits forward in his chair, he's like, what's happening? He's talking about me. And it was about an hour-long math class. It was fantastic. My favorite conference in the world, by far, is the Baltic Honey Badger, which Max is a huge part of. If you haven't been, you should go. If you have been, you know what I'm talking about. It's one of the absolute highest signals. Let's hear it for the panel. All right. These are free and open to the public. Bitcoin programming at PubKey. We don't ask a lot. We're not selling drinks. It's not a 2-drink minimum. We do have one ask. We have 2 asks, okay? Follow us on YouTube, Rumble, Twitter. Give us a like, a subscribe. That means a lot to us. It actually helps us continue doing what we're doing and keeping it, most importantly, free and open to the public. My second ask is tip your bartenders. We'll see you next time.